And hitting record. Good morning, Kip. I see you signing in there. So we will start actually with our standing position as we normally do. And let's stand with our feet parallel, hip distance apart, again, as we normally do. And we're just going to start with some breathing, inhaling through the nose, trying to fill your lungs wide. And a nice exhale. And let's do a few breaths like that. Just really trying to fill your lungs so that your rib cage expands to the front, to the sides, and to the back. And a nice big exhale. And you can choose to inhale through your nose and exhale through your nose, or inhale through your nose, exhale through your mouth. As you wish, you decide. And as you're breathing, I'm just going to explain to you a little bit about our diaphragm and how it works. The diaphragm being one of the main breathing muscles. So it sits here underneath your ribs and it kind of expands like an umbrella, if you will. So as you inhale, your diaphragm actually descends, it comes down, and your pelvic floor also in response comes down because that's another diaphragm. And as you exhale, they both come back up. So they kind of work together, the pelvic floor and the diaphragm, your breathing diaphragm. The pelvic floor is also a diaphragm. So we're going to inhale again. And if you can just visualize that action happening, that the diaphragm is descending, the pelvic floor is descending as we inhale, and that they come back up as you exhale. I don't want you to force anything. We're not trying to scoop or tighten any muscles. Just allow your breath to work. And you may or may not be aware of the muscles. You may be more aware of the diaphragm in your belly, but you may not be so aware of the diaphragm in the pelvic floor. Doesn't matter. Normally it's working. Sometimes it's not working ideally for us. And then we're going to bring our attention to a third diaphragm. So in the arches of your feet. Okay. So just maybe take a look at your feet. Some of us are flat-footed and some of us have arches. Some have high arches, some have normal, and some have low arches. But that is another diaphragm. Let's start to rock forward and back on the toes to the heels. So we're lifting the heels, lifting the toes alternately, and rolling to the ball of the foot between the first and second toe. And rolling to the center of your heel like a little bullseye. And take your time with that. So forward and back on the feet. But at the same time, think of going up toward the ceiling with your body. So instead of the body going forward and back, your body's going up and down, but your feet are rolling forward and back. Alrighty. Let's put those heels down. I want you to think about those arches under your feet. And if you could imagine that there are little snowballs there, I want you to pull your arches up away from the snowballs and let them go. And again, so we're going to try to pull the arches of the feet up away from the snowballs and let them go. So sometimes when you do those toe exercises that in Brandy's classes, it's helpful to touch your toes. Maybe you want to touch those arches and try to lift them a little. And you may not get much action, but you may feel that those muscles are working. So let's be cautious that as you're trying to lift the arches in your feet, that you're not lifting your toes or rolling your feet to the outside, because that'll be a natural tendency. I know I've already tried to do that this morning. So we're going to think about just lifting the arches away from the little snowballs and letting them come back down. And maybe closing your eyes while you're doing that movement. So we're lifting the arches of the feet and letting them come back down, imagining little snowballs underneath the arches. You want to just pull them up gently and let them come back down. And with your eyes closed, are you feeling that other muscles are working up your legs? Maybe right up into your belly? Are you holding any tension in your neck or your shoulders while we do this little tiny work with the feet? And if you are, let's try and just release any tension and do that movement as easily as you can, lifting the arches up and letting them come down. Good. Let's put our hands to our hips and we're going to bend our knees, send our knees a little more forward, keeping the heels on the floor. Again, just an exercise that I do every class. And the reason I do this exercise every class is because it's actually working your pelvic floor, which is the theme of our class today. So I didn't want to announce that ahead of time because I wanted to make sure that you fellows came to class, because typically when we talk pelvic floor, men tend to disappear. So I don't want to see your cameras dropping off there. I want to make sure you stay on. All right, so we're doing these little squats. So how is this working our pelvic floor? It's actually stretching our pelvic floor, and we need that stretch. The pelvic floor holds all of your internal organs from the bottom side. So if you think of your middle like a cylinder, your pelvic floor is the bottom of that cylinder. And as we age, everything starts to sag down. We can't do much about that, but we can try to strengthen our muscles. And that doesn't just mean tightening muscles, it also means lengthening muscles. So this little exercise that we're doing here is a stretch for the pelvic floor. So maybe you bring your hands to your butt bones. I'm going to get you to touch yourself a lot today. It's okay. You're at your home. I'm not with you. You're not with anybody else. So find your butt bones. Okay. And maybe you feel that as we do that little tiny bend, that they go wide and then they come back. They go wide and then they come back. So that sits bones are separating just a little bit. And you may not feel it. And that's totally fine. But if you can think about it and imagine how the sits bones get a little bit wider when we do this exercise, then we're going to actually get a little more movement than we might have if we don't think about it. Okay. So our mind is very powerful. So little tiny bends, little tiny bends, little tiny bends. Good. Let's go with 2 more. And then we're going to come with the heels together and the toes apart. Let's start to bend again. And bend again. So make sure you're not squeezing your bum cheeks when we straighten the legs. I want you to make sure that you're pressing your inner thighs together instead. Guess where the inner thighs attach? Some of them, not all of them. They attach right up into your pelvis. Good. So when we work the muscles on the outside of the pelvic floor, that's how we get balance in the pelvic floor muscles. We'll do a couple more like that. Good. And then just to warm up the abdominals a little bit, we're going to stay right here with a nice long spine, and we're going to start to tip forward and back and forward and back. Oh, and what is happening? We start to feel the muscles around the sits bones. The sits bones are widening when we tip and narrowing when we come up. So the sits bones widen and they come up. And they widen and they come up. Let's do that again. And you may feel that the tummy muscles are starting to connect a little more as we do this exercise. Make sure that you're breathing. Let's go with one more. And then we'll come up to standing. Feet are parallel, hip distance apart, and we'll bring our knees together. So again, we're bringing knees together, but we're sitting our hips back. Make sure that the feet are not turned in, the feet are parallel. We touch the knees and let the knees come apart. Touch the knees, let the knees come apart. And again, keep that going. Good. So we're working with the internal rotators at the hip. Make sure you're breathing. And then we're going to go to a little bit wider with our feet, knees turned out. Make sure, especially a couple of you said your knees are bothering you with the snow issues that we're having. Make sure that your kneecap is going over your second toe. So if you need to turn your feet a little more in so that that alignment is good, that's going to be really important if your knee is bugging you. We want that kneecap to go over your second toe. And you can put a little more weight in the outside edge of your foot. And we'll keep that going. So it stands to reason that the pelvic floor is going to be greatly impacted by this exercise. It's stretching. What is the pelvic floor? Where is it? Okay, the pelvic floor attaches to the pubic bones in the front and your tailbone in the back. It's like a sling from front to back. Your pelvic floor also attaches to your sits bones each side of your butt, those bones that you sit upon. So your bones are going wide and coming back together. So there's like a web of muscles and you're supporting all of your internal organs, your pelvic organs, your bladder, your rectum, part of your colon, or your colon, you're part of your intestines. So everything sort of sits there. And as we grow older, it starts to sag a bit. So we need a little more support to help keep things in place. And yes, there are openings in that pelvic floor. So there's one for the anus, male and female, we both get one for the vagina, and one for the urethra, which is also an opening for the man, except that it's almost like a tube. So it's like there's a straw, right? So you don't feel the opening as a man the way a woman would feel the opening. All right, let's come down and onto our back. You're going to use your towel behind your head or your sponge ball, whichever you have. And we're lying with our spine neutral. And we're going to start to breathe again. So let's bring our hands to our rib cage. And we're going to inhale, breathe wide, wide, wide. Fill your lungs to capacity. Think about how your diaphragm descends and the pelvic floor also. And then exhale. So by just doing breathing exercises, we are actually exercising your pelvic floor. If you really fill those lungs completely, and then long, slow exhale. Good. So it's a natural reaction of the pelvic floor to work with the breathing diaphragm, the diaphragm in your rib cage. I don't want you to force anything, no scooping, no lifting. Just fill the lungs and empty the lungs. And imagine the connection between these two diaphragms so that as you inhale, both diaphragms, pelvic floor, and the one in your belly, they descend, they go down. And then as you exhale, they come back to normal. So think about that happening. Don't force anything. Don't press with your pelvic floor. No action down there. Just let it happen. And you may or may not be aware of it. Most likely you will not be aware of it. Okay. So this time, let's inhale and expand the rib cage fully, wide, wide, wide. And I want you to start to exhale and deflate your belly, but do not deflate your ribs. So your belly is getting hollow and skinny, but your rib cage is maintaining its width. And then we'll do that again. Let's inhale, fully fill the lungs. Feel your ribs expand to the walls, to the ceiling, to the floor. And then as you exhale, keep the width in the rib cage as you release your breath, almost like a long, slow gas leak. And you'll start to feel a connection in your abdominal wall here as it scoops and hollows. Let's do that again. Big inhale. And a long, slow gas leak as you exhale, keeping the width in the rib cage, but making your waist a little bit smaller. No movement in the spine. The spine is staying neutral. Another big breath like that. Keep the width in the rib cage. And then we'll let that type of breathing be. That's called hypopressive breathing. We're going to do just a little imprint of the spine, a tilt of the pelvis, flattening out the lumbar spine and coming back to neutral. Again, same exercises that we do pretty much in every class that I teach. A little bit of pelvic tilting, maybe coordinating that with your breath. And we'll come back to neutral. We'll tip our nose to the ceiling and bring our chin down toward our chest. So anybody who's been shoveling snow, I want to make sure that you get some exercises to help adjust your body after whatever contortions it was in during your shoveling session with that snow that was heavy as concrete. And we'll tip our nose up toward the ceiling and we'll circle the head in one direction. So it's like you're drawing on the ceiling, like you're Pinocchio with a very long nose, just with the tip of the nose, drawing circles on the ceiling. And then reverse that. Good. Let's bring our hands to our pelvis and we'll start to rock your pelvis from left to right. Very little movement with the legs. And if you can think of your pelvis like a soup bowl, it's full of soup and you're tipping your soup to the right and then tipping your soup to the left, and make that a nice smooth action from side to side. Take your time with it. There's no rush. Want it to just feel nice. We're warming up some small muscles in the lower back. And then we can step the feet wider and we'll move the pelvis and the legs also from side to side. So one side to the other. And again, nice smooth movement. You go as far as feels good for you. Maybe you'll feel the stretch in the quads, maybe in the hip flexors, maybe in the back. And then we'll come back to neutral. Let's take our towel or our ball away. We'll bring our hands to the ceiling and let's put fingers together, palms together, thumbs together. And we're going to reach up to touch the ceiling and let those shoulder blades come back to the floor. And we'll reach up to touch the ceiling and bring your shoulder blades back to the floor. Let's do that again. We're going to reach up and down. Maybe you're feeling a little stretch between the shoulder blades. Let's reach up. Let's keep the shoulders lifted. Keep the palms glued together. Move your head and your arms simultaneously. We're going from side to side. We'll keep our pelvis still, keep the legs still. Feet are firmly planted. And we're following our thumbs with our eyes. So going from one side to the other. And again, it's not a huge movement. It should feel nice. Anything doesn't feel good, you stop or you adjust or make your movement smaller. And you're breathing one side to the other. Let's continue moving the arms, but keep the head still. And we'll continue to follow your thumbs with your eyes. So your eyes are moving inside your head, but your head is not moving. Your arms are moving, your shoulders are moving, your rib cage is turning just a little as you follow your thumbs with your eyes. Good. Let's turn our head in the opposite direction of the arms. One side to the other. One side to the other. Can you follow your thumbs with your eyes? That's a little bit more challenging as you're turning your head away from your thumbs. But maybe you're able to follow them anyway. Couple more. And then we'll separate our hands. Let's reach the arms up and then plug your shoulders down into the mat like you're plugging them into an outlet, like a socket. We're going to send your arms over your head and bring our hands back to the ceiling. And again, let's send the arms over the head. I want you to think about stabilizing your spine and knitting your ribs together as the arms go over your head. So it's typically going to be easier to do that with an exhale. So try that. Draw the ribs in, draw the waist in. And again. So as we're doing this exercise, just close your eyes and crawl inside your body. Think about what's happening with your two diaphragms. As you exhale, your diaphragms come up. As you inhale, your diaphragms go down. So think about that. As you exhale, the diaphragms lift. As you inhale, the diaphragms descend. Are you a little more aware of your pelvic floor in this particular exercise? I don't want you to grip or tighten your bum cheeks or anything. I just want you to become aware as you're exhaling. Is there a little feeling that maybe the pelvic floor is actually doing something? You're not trying to make it do more than what it's doing. Maybe there's an action there. Maybe there's just a sense that that muscle is actually active, and that is great. Let's bring our hands down by our side. We're just going to do some snow angels because it's a great day to do snow angels. Well, actually not, because I don't think it would be possible with the snow today. Frozen concrete doesn't make for good snow angels. So just move those arms from side to side in a pain-free range of motion. So I really am hoping that by the end of this class, you will be just a little more aware of your pelvic floor, where it is, what it's doing, if anything at all. Let's come over and onto hands and knees. So we'll have our hands below our shoulders, knees below our hips, and there's a small little dip in your lower back. Let's slide our shoulder blades together and shoulder blades apart. And shoulder blades together and shoulder blades apart. Shoulder blades together and apart. A couple more. Make sure that you're still breathing. Doesn't matter when. Inhale or exhale, you're just not holding your breath. Good. Let's keep ourselves here with the small dip in the lower back, and you're going to start to just glide backwards and forwards. And we're gliding backwards and forwards. So think about your sits bones again as they widen when we glide backward, and they come to normal when we come forward. We are stretching our pelvic floor. So the pelvic floor widens and then it comes back to neutral. Tiny little exercise. I don't always cue it. I don't always tell you why we're doing this exercise, but this is why. You want to make sure that you're not going too far back, that you end up rounding your spine and tucking your tail. We want to make sure that we keep this nice little dip in your lower back. And it's almost like that tailbone is lifted a little bit as we glide the hips away. And I also like to do this quite often from the forearms because it really doesn't allow you to sit with your tailbone tucked under. Okay, so because the pelvic floor is attached to the pubic bones in the front and the tailbone in the back, if we tuck our tailbone under, then we're going to get a tight pelvic floor. So if that's an exercise that you do, which would be the classic Kegel, then you need to do this exercise to stretch to offset the tightening of a classic Kegel exercise. Let's come up to a tall kneeling position. All right, we're going to bring right ear to right shoulder, and we're just coming over into a little side bend. And we'll do that again. And I'll just talk about the classic Kegel while you're doing these exercises. So Kegels were developed by Dr. Kegel in the 1940s. And they are often given as pelvic floor exercises. The traditional Kegel, you pretend that you're peeing and you're going to stop, and you hold your pee. You stop the flow. That's the classic Kegel. The problem with that is that it tightens the muscles. And when you do repetitions and repetitions and repetitions of Kegels, you end up with an overly tight pelvic floor. And we want our pelvic floor to be elastic. All right, let's go to the other side. Left ear to left shoulder, a little side bend. A little side bend. A little side bend. Again, we're doing this in a nice controlled manner here. Controlled manner. Good. Let's go with another one. And then we're going to go back onto hands and knees. All right, so a pelvic floor exercise, not a classic Kegel. We're going to pretend that you have a Kleenex right on your butt. All right. I want you to pretend with your vagina or with your crown jewels that you're going to grab that Kleenex and pull it inside your body. And you're going to grab it again and pull it up inside your body. So harder for a man to do. We're going to try this in several different positions. I want you to get those crown jewels and feel like you're just grabbing that Kleenex with them. They become active and they lift and pull it up inside the body. Much harder for men to connect with this exercise, with any pelvic floor exercises, quite honestly. And again, we're going to pull that Kleenex inside. Do we need a new Kleenex? Let's push it back out, millimeter by millimeter by millimeter. We're pushing that Kleenex back out, and we'll get a new Kleenex. And we're going to start to pull it inside the body, millimeter by millimeter. So there are layers in the pelvic floor. And as we pull this Kleenex inside the body, you can see that we're working really deep up into the cavity of your pelvis. And then we'll start to press that back out, millimeter by millimeter by millimeter. And let's do that again. New Kleenex, pull it in, pull it in, pull it in. So the vagina acts like a hand almost. And you're bringing up right up inside towards your belly button on the inside. And then you're going to press it back out, millimeter by millimeter by millimeter. Good. And then we're going to come to a seated position. Let's sit with our legs crossed. And we're going to bring our hands just to our rib cage, crossing them. And we're going to start to turn from right to left. So if you're better to sit on a towel or a block in this position, so that your spine is better aligned and you're sitting taller and straighter, please do that. If you're okay on the floor, you're sitting on your butt bones. All right, think about your sits bones that you're sitting on. Think about where your pubic bone is. Think about where your tailbone is. And think about that pelvic floor in that mesh in between, that web of muscles. All right, let's take one hand behind your back. We're just going to start to move the arm away from your back. We're just doing those little tiny movements. This is just to help us move a little more freely in our rotation. Your hand is coming away from your back, away from your back, away from your back. Good. And we'll cross the arms and do those rotations again. So today I didn't give you a choice as to which side was tight. We're doing both sides anyway. You probably went to your tight side first regardless. Let's do the same thing with the other hand behind the back, and we'll move the arm away, 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 away. Sitting taller and straighter. And then crossing the arms, we'll do those rotations again. Good. So let's take our legs out in front of us. I'll turn this way a bit. And I want you to squeeze your bum cheeks. It kind of lifts you up, right? We're going to squeeze your bum cheeks and let go. Squeeze and let go. Squeeze and let go. So it's almost like you hit a little speed bump in the road. So those glute muscles are working. Now, especially for if you're not connected to your pelvic floor, you may think that squeezing your bum is your pelvic floor, but it is not. So I want you to squeeze your bum cheeks. We're working them right now. We're going to get them tired. All right. And we're going to go a little more quickly. So it's almost like you're going along in a bumpy carriage or a bumpy road here. Bum cheeks lifting you, lifting you, lifting you, lifting you. And then we're going to sit and relax those glute muscles. Now I want you to think about your pelvic floor. Let's lift our pelvic floor up away from the floor and let it go back down. So the bum cheeks don't engage. It's the muscles between your pubic bone and your tailbone and your sits bones that is lifting and back down. So if you want, remember in the beginning, we did a snowball at the arches of the feet. You can imagine you're sitting on a snowball here and it's cold. So pull the muscles away in the pelvic floor and let them come back down. So glute muscles, butt muscles are not working. Muscles between the pubic bone, tailbone, and the two sits bones are lifting and lowering. Good. How are we doing with that? It's hard for me to tell. Most of you have your cameras off now. All right. Let's go to cross legs. And we're going to do a similar exercise. So I'm giving you a lot of pelvic floor exercises today. You can play with them on your own after class or in the future. But I wanted to make sure that you have some variety of exercises. Pelvic floor gets very tired, so you may find that you don't have the response that you would like to have as we do these exercises. I want you to think about a strawberry on the floor. And I want you to pick that strawberry up again with the vagina or the crown jewels, whichever you happen to own on your body. And we're going to put the strawberry back down. And you're doing it very gently. So let's pick the strawberry up and lift it up into the pelvic cavity. And then gently let it back down. So there's degrees of connection here as we grab that strawberry, gently pull it up inside the cavity and let it come back down. You may find that your lower belly muscles are working at the same time, because they are. They tend to work together with the transverse abdominis, the pelvic floor. So you may feel some action in your lower belly while we do this exercise. So let's pick that strawberry up again. You're going to hold it there gently and let's breathe. Hold the strawberry up, hold the crown jewels up and breathe. Inhale and exhale. Try to keep it lifted. So this is an idea of the strength of your pelvic floor if you're able to keep it lifted and breathe at the same time. So now we are asking for a little more action in that pelvic floor. And then let's gently put that strawberry down and we're going to make some jam. I want you to press pelvic floor down, lift it up, press it down again, lift it up. So crown jewels are pressing into the mat and lifting, pressing down and lifting, and pressing down and lifting. Let's do that again. Couple more times. Do you feel some action there? Your bum cheeks are not working. It's the muscles between the pelvic bones, pubic bone, tailbone, sits bones. Good. Let's take our towel and we'll just put it behind our lower back or your sacrum. To watch the time, I could go on for a very long time on this topic, but I want to give you a little bit of abdominal exercise today too. So we're going to tilt our pelvis, tuck our tail, and we'll start to rock backward and then come up. Let's bring the arms up to the sky, tilt the pelvis, tuck, and roll backward. Good. So we're lifting up tall, we're tilting, and up. And let's tilt, let's stay right here, and we'll start to lift one leg and lower the leg, and lift the other leg and lower the leg. Let's inhale and exhale. Make sure that you are breathing. And you start to feel lower tummy muscles working. Keep that going, the knees coming toward the chest. Beautiful. And then we'll put the soles of the feet together and press the knees wide. Interesting position. What are we stretching with this? Inner thighs, pelvic floor. Good. Let's go onto hands and knees again. We're going to take our right arm up to the sky and we'll go into a bigger rotation here. Inhale and exhale. Couple more times. And switching arms up and under. Good. Let's stay on hands and knees. We're going to take our right leg behind us and we'll flex that foot. We're going to keep our pelvis stable and we'll start to lift and lower this leg. Good. I want you to start to feel your butt muscle as you do this exercise. Your glute muscle is working. We want to have our glutes strong for the health of our pelvic floor. So these, we talk about agonists, antagonists in anatomy, but when we have one muscle group strong or tight and the opposing muscle group is not as strong, then we get an imbalance. So by working our butt muscles, we are balancing the work of the pelvic floor and helping keep that pelvic floor healthy. I don't know if I'm explaining that well, but let's switch legs. We're going to flex the foot and we'll lift and lift and lift. So the butt muscles attached into the sacrum, the pelvis, and that affects the tailbone. And maybe I should just stop talking. I'm not sure that I'm explaining this well. All right. So let's just suffice it to say that we need the balance. We need those glute muscles to be strong to help balance the strength of the pelvic floor. Let's come back. Let's come to a seated position again. And now I want you to really close your eyes. This is going to be a tougher one. I want you to think about a little marble on the floor. And I want you to pick that marble up with the back of the pelvic floor and put it back down. So let's pick it up with the back of the pelvic floor. So more towards your tailbone, towards the anus. And that's typically where most of us will be tight, unless you are tested by a perineal physiotherapist or osteopath. You won't really know. Your body you will not be able to tell what muscles are tight and what muscles are weak. But the typical tightness in a pelvic floor would be around the anus. Okay, and that stands to reason. If we're not doing normal pelvic floor exercises, then this one works all the time, right? All right, let's move that marble up and just move it a little more forward with your mind. And you're going to try and pick that marble up with the front of the pelvic floor. And so with your eyes closed, that will be the better way to connect with those muscles. Try to pick the pelvic floor or the marble up with the front of the pelvic floor, so more towards the pubic bones. And see what that feels like. Try not to engage around the anus, but more in the front where the pubic bones are. How is that working? And that may take some time to connect with that muscle at the front. Remember, our muscles have different fibers. They run in such lengths that, you know, part of a muscle can be active and the other part of it cannot be active. So think about lifting the front. With your mind, you can actually get some more action there. All right, let's let that marble go down. Now we're going to take it over to your right sits bone. And we're going to try and lift that marble up on the right side. So think of it like a diamond shape, pubic bone, tailbone, each sits bone. You're trying to pull up on this right side. How's that working? And again, with your eyes closed, maybe you can get a little more connection to that right side of the diamond. And then let's switch it over to the left side. So we're trying to lift the marble on the left side, put it back down, lift it, put it back down. Are we having any success or any awareness at all of those muscles even activating? Got a thumbs up there. Good. Couple thumbs up. Very nice, ladies. Men, you all have your cameras turned off. I have no idea what you're doing. All right. So that gives you an indication of maybe where we're strong or where we're weak in our pelvic floor by going to different sections of the pelvic floor. Again, you need to see a specialist to get a diagnosis of, well, we got a thumbs up, Kip, thank you. It's better to see a specialist to get a diagnosis of where we're weak as opposed to thinking we know where we're weak in the pelvic floor. And the pelvic floor health is super, super, super important. Let's come over and onto our tummy. We're gonna leave that again. So let's take our hands just by our side, our noses down. We're going to scoop our belly up, tip our nose away from the floor and start to lift your chest up and then come back down. And we'll tighten your tummy, tip your nose forward, and we'll start to lift your chest And we'll come back down. So a nice little extension here, nothing crazy. Let's think about lengthening your legs away from you and scooping your tummy in. Let's go with another one. We're lifting, lifting, lifting. We'll hold it here and we'll just hover those arms. So working the spinal extensors, drawing the lower tummy away from the floor, and then coming back down. And again, abdominals tighten, tip the nose, and we'll start to lift. And we'll hover those arms. Can you lengthen your legs a little more? Can you keep your belly lifted? Are you breathing? And then we're going to come back down. Let's take our hands down by our side, draw the tummy in. Make sure your palms are turned to face the floor. Draw the shoulders back. We'll lift our head and chest away from the floor. Lift the arms and hold them here. Hollowing the belly. As you exhale, we want that good connection in the belly. And then we're going to come back down. And let's go onto our side. So on our side, we're going to prop up on our elbow. We'll bring our feet behind us. Our knees are forward. We're lifting and lowering the rib cage. Let's lift the rib cage up. Let's lift the arm up. We'll lift the pelvis, lower the pelvis. If this is too much for you today, you can keep your hips down and do this type of movement instead, where you're just getting a big stretch. Maybe that'll feel better for you today, especially if you were shoveling a lot yesterday. You do what feels good for you. All right, let's separate our feet or our knees. We're going to take the arm that's supporting you, reach it up, and we're going to come into a little tiny side bend. So it's almost like you're reaching up and over towards your right shoulder. So not really much further, and you just want to open this side of the rib cage. And let's switch. Again, your knees are forward, your feet are behind. We move the rib cage up and down. And you have the option, we can lift and lower hips. If that feels like it's too much today, go with the other option of lifting and lowering this arm, lifting and lowering the ribs, and you get a big stretch instead. Good. And then we'll separate the knees. We'll take the arm up, lift up tall, and reach and stretch. So you're getting the opening here. Not a huge stretch, or sorry, not a huge side bend, but a big stretch. And then we'll come back to that first side. We're going to have our knees forward, our feet forward. Our feet are flexed. So we've got 90-degree angle at the knee and the hip, rib cage is up. So we have a nice neutral spine, and we'll start to lift and lower this leg. So we open and we close. And if you want to imagine that you have a little weight here on your knee, we're working the piriformis muscle, glute med, glute min, and all of those muscles attach to the back side of your pelvis, the sacrum. And again, you're giving balance to your pelvic floor by working the glute muscles. Let's keep our feet together. Let's open the knee and close the knee. So we're really trying hard to keep the pelvis stable. As we open and close that knee, the pelvis does not move. And you'll start to feel the muscles working sort of behind your hip bone here. All right, let's try lifting that leg up and doing that same movement with your leg in the air. So you're getting that external rotation. The knee is opening. Your foot is staying roughly in the same spot here, but your knee is lifting and lowering. And maybe you find that more effective and you want to do a few more repetitions here with this one. You're feeling the backside of your hip. Let's bring the legs down. Keep the knees together and we'll lift and lower the foot. Good. Just working the internal rotators. Mhm. And then we can step this foot in front of the other leg and press actively with that foot down into the floor. All right, let's go on to our back. You're going to grab your ball or your towel, whichever, and we're going to put it between the knees. The knees are coming over top of the hips. And here you're going to start to squeeze. So inner thighs attach into the base of the pelvis, so they affect the pelvic floor. So I do a lot of inner thigh exercises for that reason. Also because most people's inner thighs are weak and we want them to be strong. They should be 90% the strength of your quads. So we're squeezing and letting go, squeezing, letting go, squeezing, letting go. And now I want you to squeeze whichever you have, towel or ball, like you're trying to pop it. Squeeze it or flatten it as best as you can. You're not letting go, you're continuing to breathe. And then we're going to pump again for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we're going to bring the knees in toward the chest. Let's separate the knees and we're going to open them in a circle. So you're going around the knees, you're going opposite directions. You have one hand on each knee. And then we'll reverse it. And then we'll put our feet down. Let's go into just a little bridge here. So our feet are parallel, hip distance apart. Pressing down in both feet will lift the hips and we'll lower the hips. Press down both feet, lift the hips and lower the hips. And again, press down both feet, lift the hips, lower. Feel how the glute muscles engage as soon as you press your feet down into the floor. And we're going with a flat back. So we're not going with a rolled spine. It's a nice neutral spine, and you're not coming up very high. We're keeping shoulder blades on the floor. Good. Let's lift up here. I want you to squeeze your bum cheeks, let go, squeeze, let go, squeeze, let go. A couple times you feel your butt muscles working. I want you to let your butt muscles stay relaxed and try and scoop up your pelvic floor and let it go. And scoop up your pelvic floor and let it go. So connecting with pelvic floor is so specific for people. For some people, will never connect in a seated position, but maybe hands and knees works. Maybe this position works because you can scoop your pelvic floor up, but you know if you're squeezing your bum cheeks. So make sure that you need to put your hands on your butt. Make sure your glute muscles are relaxed and see if you can't engage and lift that pelvic floor up and down. You want your pelvic floor to be like a trampoline. It needs to stretch and lift and needs to descend. You can imagine somebody jumping on it up and down. You want it to be elastic. A weak muscle is a tight muscle and a short muscle or a long muscle as well. But a strong muscle has the elasticity to be able to bounce. It can go long and it can go short. And let's come on down. Let's come to the other side. So maybe that was a good way for some of us to connect with pelvic floor, that position, because it sort of eliminates any interference. Let's come again, propped up on your elbow, and we're going to start to lift and lower this leg. Good. So the pelvis is staying still, the leg is lifting and lowering, the feet are flexed, and you may find that already this side starts to work a little more quickly than the first side. Make sure that you're not going too quickly with these exercises. The slower actually, the speed, the more effective the exercise. And then we're going to keep our feet together and we'll open and close the knee. Good. And then maybe we'll lift that leg and we'll do that rotation with the foot higher. If this is too much for you, keep the foot down so that the feet are touching. We're getting that little bit of external rotation, external rotation, external rotation. Again. And I want you to go until you feel the same amount of work on this side. That doesn't mean it's the same number of repetitions. We are not balanced. So therefore, the exact same number of repetitions isn't necessarily going to change anything for us. Let's keep our knees together and we'll lift and lower the foot. Lift and lower the foot, up and down. And you'll feel the muscles more in the front of the hip working here. Maybe you feel your sits bones widening with this exercise. Maybe you don't. All right, let's bring that foot in front of the other leg and we'll press down with the foot into the floor. And then we'll take our self back onto hands and knees. So hands and knees, let's have that small little curve in the back. And we're going to start to glide our hips back and forward. And this is a really nice stretch for those muscles that we were working along with your pelvic floor. So it may feel good right now. So it's a little tiny glide. Make sure you're not going so far back that you tuck your tail under. Think of that tailbone lifted. Good. Let's come up to tall kneeling. We're going to take our feet forward and come up to standing. All right. Let's do a couple breaths again. Let's inhale through the nose. Exhale through the nose or mouth, you decide. Bring your awareness to your diaphragms. Maybe you're more aware of what's happening in the pelvic floor, in your breathing muscle. As you inhale, they descend. As you exhale, they come up. Again, nice big inhale, nice big exhale. On your exhale, let's think of lifting pelvic floor this time, but not squeezing your bum cheeks and letting everything go. Now you may find that when we connect our lower tummy muscles, that pelvic floor actually starts to work with it. And quite often that's the case, and that's totally great. Let's do that again. As you exhale, you're drawing your pelvic floor up, drawing in at your waist. Let's take our arms up, big inhale. And a big exhale. And again, I want you to just breathe, reach up to the ceiling like you're touching the ceiling. And exhale. Let's go again, big inhale. And hands are coming together, hands are coming to your heart. I thank you for joining me this morning and being patient working with pelvic floor. If you'd like a referral to a good pelvic floor specialist, Brandy and I both know physiotherapists and osteopaths that do that work. So let us know what you think. and I will see you Monday.
I have a
Thank you
question.
for a good